Previously on Keeping Up with the Madridistas. After many years, the French golden goose Kylian Mbappe was finally at Real Madrid. Joyous cheers could be heard from the same fans who held Mbappe 0 Champions League jerseys just a year prior, but we'll just ignore that. However, Real Madrid forgot something very important. Literally every other problem the club needed to deal with. And because of the club's neglecting of its midfield and defense, they went trophyless for the first time in 4 years. But this season would be different. With Ancelotti gone, Real Madrid brought in the best young up-and-coming manager in the business, Xabi Alonso. Alonso himself is a club legend and would now be returning with his tactical expertise. A match made in heaven. But who's to say heaven isn't just Real Madrid? Going into the transfer window, the club made sure to put in some great work, as they always do. Madrid last season quite literally had no competent left back, so they bring in Alvaro Carreras, who actually used to be part of the youth academy. He spent 3 years, left on a free, and is now back, having cost the club 50 million. Nothing but the best business practices here at Real Madrid. With the center-back depth consisting of 2 injury-prone players, EDP and Antonio Rudiger, there was desperate need for a new option. So in came the highly rated young defender Dean Howson, a man who, despite being linked with numerous clubs, always knew Real Madrid was his end goal. Just goes to show, when Real comes knocking, your players will never be able to resist. All of last year, the Madridistas had to be subjected to Lucas Vazquez at right back, not even being comes even close to how bad of a punishment this is. But while this torture was unfolding, the storied club was working on an important mission behind the scenes. Operation Rage Bait Liverpool fans. And by the summer, Real Madrid reached their end goal of dealing with the defensive liabilities by acquiring a right back that can't defend. Finally, Madrid needed someone who truly aligns with the club values, so they brought in a right winger named Franco. Hey, but what about the midfield? There's still no Toni Kroos replacement, and also now your other experienced midfielder, Luka Modric, is gone. Nah, don't worry about it. Real Madrid began the Xabi Alonso era by winning their first 7 games, but it all wasn't that pretty. With the squad having no proper preseason, Alonso would basically have to experiment with the team during the start of the campaign, which as a result had Madrid scratching past a lot of opponents they really should be wiping the floor with on paper. And no game was more evident of this than when Marseille came to the Bernabeu for Real's Champions League opener. Los Blancos were struggling throughout, but fortunately they heard the birds singing. Es un penal Real Madrid! By no means was this actually a penalty, but I fucking hate Marseille, so I'll allow it this one time. 2 weeks later though, Real experienced a rude awakening at the hands of Atleti. After going 2-1 up, they conceded 4 unanswered to their rivals. It was Real's worst loss to Atleti since 2015, and you'd have to go all the way back to 1950 for the last time they conceded 5 against them. With this loss as well, Xabi Alonso's men dropped to 2nd in La Liga behind Barcelona. However, Barcelona suffered an embarrassing loss in the following week, which allowed Real to hop back to the top after a bounce-back win versus Villarreal. The league leaders then caught and compromised FBI's most wanted terrorist, Jose Bordalas, as Mbappe scores the only goal in a survival campaign versus Getafe. Which, speaking of, amidst the uncertainties and struggles, Mbappe was fucking killing it. Up to this point, Mbappe had scored at least 1 goal in all but 1 game. And that's definitely the form you want to have entering your first Clasico of the season. Thanks to goals from him and Jude Bellingham, Mbappe for the first time as a Real Madrid player finally got the better of hated rivals Barcelona. And after a couple months of growing pains, it seemed like Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid were starting to finally figure things out, as they were now a season-high 5 points above 2nd place. And then November happened. Following a 4-0 destruction of Peter Lim's self-sabotaging project to start the month, Real Madrid struggled throughout the rest of November versus some pretty mediocre La Liga sides. They failed to score versus Rayo Vallecano, had to scratch a late equalizer versus Elche, and needed a penalty to save them from losing to 18th place Girona. Meanwhile, in the Champions League, things were no different. Thibaut Courtois saved Real from conceding like 5 goals versus one of the worst Liverpool sides in recent time, and then later in the month, due to a bunch of injuries and Courtois having the stomach flu, Mbappe's godly form saved this team's ass versus Olympiacos. But that was just the stuff on the surface, because reports had actually come out about how there was discontent between Xabi Alonso and some of the players in the dressing room. You see, when the manager first joined the club, he quickly instilled a stricter day-to-day regimen and had his team playing a more demanding and disciplined style of football. And this control over player schedules and the lack of freedom on the pitch left many players upset. There were even reports that some players were claiming Alonso's approach was unfair because they had won so much already without the manager, while others were apparently dissing him, saying, quote, "He thinks he's Pep Guardiola, but for now he's just shabby." How are these guys so entitled when they didn't win a single thing last season? Now this was all not so great, but the relationship between Xabi Alonso and Vinny Jr. was far worse. This year, Vinny's role has seen a lot less freedom, a lot less minutes, and he's been pissed about it. Things really blew up when during El Clasico, he stormed off the pitch screaming after being subbed off in the 72nd minute. Vinny later apologized for this on social media, but conveniently left out any mention of Xabi Alonso. Then, after being left on the bench in Real's 2-2 draw with Elche, Vinny Jr. personally told the club he was holding off on any contract negotiations because of his relationship with Xabi Alonso. This club is actually a headache. Who the fuck would subject themselves to this? Having dropped points in 3 straight league games, Real Madrid found themselves back in second to start December. Nonetheless, Los Blancos finally ended their winless run with a convincing win vs Bilbao. But then just 4 days later, they were stunned by Celta Vigo at home, and of course, this isn't a Real Madrid season unless they have beef with the referee who won't bow down to their every command. Anyways, Real Madrid continued to underwhelm severely as just 3 days later, they lost vs Man City in the Champions League, and now Xabi Alonso's job was really in danger. In his next match vs Alaves, it was looking like his last for the club after his team conceded an equalizer with less than 25 minutes remaining. Fortunately though, Rodrigo came in to save the day and his employment. However, 3 days later, things got even more egregious, as in the last minutes of a Copa del Rey match, Alonso was saved from an embarrassing choke job versus a team fighting to stay up in the 3rd division. And then, just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, on the morning of New Year's Eve, Kylian Mbappe was diagnosed with a knee injury. And this could not have been worse timing, as Real Madrid's only reliable source for goals would more than likely be out for the Supercopa now. But despite Real's second best scorer only having just 5 goals to his name, it didn't really seem to faze him all that much. Los Blancos destroyed Real Betis 5-1 with a 21-year-old Gonzalo Garcia scoring a hat-trick, and then Xabi Alonso's men got some revenge for Atleti to get that one step closer to the team's first bit of silverware since 23-24. However, they would have to beat a familiar foe to do so: Barcelona. With injuries to most of his defenders, Xabi Alonso decided to set Real Madrid up in a back 5 in order to soak up pressure and release on the counter. It worked for a bit, but the backline was so dysfunctional and inexperienced that it quickly showed signs of breaking and eventually did, conceding in the 36th minute. But fear not, Madridistas, because with no Mbappe, Vinny Jr. was able to finally play with more freedom again, and took full advantage of it with a brilliant solo goal right before halftime. Unfortunately for him though, Madrid's backline decided to pull a me during Arsenal-Liverpool and fell asleep before the halftime whistle actually blew. The whistle still hasn't blown yet though. Now 2 minutes over the designated 3 minutes of stoppage time, Real Madrid once again find an equalizer. That is now 3 goals in 4 minutes. Absolute chaos. However, that Madrid defense just won't stop letting everyone down, as no one bothers to close anyone down, and with the help of EDP's touch, Los Blancos concede a 3rd. Nonetheless, this team will not quit. Fast forward to the dying minutes of the game. Carreras has an opportunity from point blank. One last opportunity now. Corner delivery bounces to Mbappe, and it's EDP with the free header. And so Real Madrid lose to Barcelona and fall short once again. This is Real Madrid we're talking about, by the way, so of course there was some drama after this team failed to win a trophy again. After the game, Xabi Alonso was trying to get the team to join for a Champions Guard of Honor, to which Mbappe, who played the last 15 minutes of the game, protested and told his teams just to walk back to the dressing room. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, it seems like the entitled players are doing entitled things again. Not necessarily, actually. This wasn't really that big of a deal, just a simple disagreement. I say this because only a month ago, players like Jude Bellingham and Thibaut Courtois actually spoke out in support of their manager. Also, it seems like Xabi Alonso was slowly starting to let off a little, saying in mid-December, quote, "I've learned things and adjusted myself. Got to know things, adapted. The players, too. It's a process. We're always evolving." Even though it was a tough loss and Real honestly played like Getafe the entire time, the future did seem to be bright, and it was only a matter of time that Los Blancos would finally lift the trophy again. Though, he's just left the club. That's right, folks. Xabi Alonso simply had enough of the constant bullshit he was having to deal with and left the club. I know there's gonna be headlines that say Real Madrid sacked him. I really doubt that. Now, was Xabi Alonso's tactics a little bit questionable from time to time? Absolutely. But the whole point of bringing in a manager like Xabi Alonso was for him to be the future of the club. But despite no preseason organized, the depth still being dog shit, Xabi was seemingly expected to turn shit into gold overnight. And on top of all of this, Xabi was basically fending for himself against a bunch of entitled little fucks because the club who claimed that this guy was the future didn't bother to actually back him whatsoever. They didn't back him against the players, they were trying to get in some medical staff that Xabi Alonso didn't want to work with, and also transfers. Forget about it. I mean, it's no wonder why he left after just 30 games. My guy is free now. But if we're being honest with ourselves, this really is just the Real Madrid way. Club president Dark Lord Perez doesn't see Real Madrid as a club, he sees it like Hollywood. It doesn't matter how shit the movie is, they got the A-listers on the red carpet. We've also mentioned this before, but this club loves to make itself out to be a victim. All the fucking time. Remember when Real Madrid TV went after an official which made them cry during a press conference because their family was being affected? And then the club itself responded to this by threatening to boycott the Copa del Rey final? Well, after Real's 2-0 loss to Celta, Real Madrid TV decided to go after the official in that game too. Even being clowned on by the entire universe last season, they still have no shame. So of course the players themselves won't have any either. Real Madrid is just politics and image. That's literally it. There was actually a report that Xabi Alonso probably would have stayed until the end of the season had he not had some disastrous results. And the players saw this and were just kind of concerned about their image. Guys, you have an injury crisis going on. Like, you can settle for a little bit sometimes. Again, this was an up-and-coming manager for the future, and they gave him no time. The club didn't give him any time, and especially the players didn't. So, what's the future for Real Madrid now? You know, who's gonna be the new coach? Alvaro Arbeloa. Apparently his philosophy, by the way, revolves around gegenpressing. Good luck trying to fucking tell your players to do that, holy shit. And even if Arbeloa gives in to the players' demands and lets them play freely and whatnot, basically just let the players decide what they want to do on the pitch, they did that last season. And look what happened. And that's not even considering the lack of depth this squad has and the fact there's probably not going to be any reinforcements added this January, which is going to be fantastic for the club, because again, they're going through an injury crisis. Also, Real Madrid just brought back Antonio Pintus, the guy who was responsible for a good amount of the injury crisis last season. So, I'm sure that'll end well. By the way, while I don't think this was entirely on Mbappe this time, it is pretty funny that he's basically brought the losing culture he personally instilled at PSG to Real Madrid. Have fun with him, guys. But what do you guys think about this whole situation? Are Real Madrid going to bounce back from this? Are they going to win a trophy this season? Let me know. Of course, though, a massive shout out to all our members, including Janos Balas, Jeremy Sayu 7, Jeremiah Owusu Ajimang, Django, Anazir Makalankam, Alex Rod, Kentra Gatra, Saint Terran, Sylvia Citrus, Cheesebait, Window Gel, Bin Likes Rugby More, Davox, The Portergeyser, Wise Orange, Polo Protos, Fun Fan, A Ghostly Owl, Coney Wolves, Leakstab, Mutanai, Apollo, Thrilling ADT 13, Los Milos, La James Braun, Vecino, Napside, Money Cash Hose, Quantavious Pork, Lilia Lover, Stewed Monk, Red Yellow, Fuxi, MX Sand, Harry Maguire's Love Toenail, Flaquito, Thierry's Thoughts, Kev C, Dominic Griffin, Kyler Kress, Mohammed Altanib, Nish, Patrick Barley, Rashford God 5, Raspberry Ale, and Unbroken Persona. If you'd like to become a member on the channel, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow me on Twitch. The Champions League games will be coming back soon, so I will be doing some live watch-alongs there, and hopefully some other ones as well, once I recover from this bullshit. But until then, I'll see you guys. A la Madrid! A la Madrid, I'm gonna pay my bills.